Every afternoon, somewhere between 2 and 4, it happens. Your thoughts slow. Your eyes go soft. Your body feels like it's been quietly filled with sand. You reach for coffee. You scroll through your phone without reading anything. You blame the lunch you ate or the sleep you didn't get. But this feeling comes on the days you slept perfectly. It comes on the days you skipped lunch entirely. It doesn't matter. Right around 3 p.m., your brain goes somewhere else, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Scientists have a name for it, but the real explanation goes much further than anything you'd find on a nutrition label or a productivity blog. Because your brain doesn't slow down at 3 p.m. because something went wrong. It slows down because something is working exactly as it was designed to. And the system that designed it is millions of years older than you are. Most people blame lunch. The blood rushes to your stomach. Your body pulls energy away from your brain to handle digestion. And that isn't entirely wrong. Eating does affect alertness. But here's the problem. Studies have consistently shown that the 3 p.m. crash appears even in people who ate nothing since morning. It shows up in fasting subjects. It shows up in people who skipped breakfast and worked straight through the day without a single calorie. The crash isn't about food. It was there long before you ate anything at all, which means the answer lies somewhere far deeper than your stomach. The real answer starts with a structure at the base of your brain roughly the size of a grain of rice. And what it does every single day in every single person alive on Earth is run a clock. Inside your hypothalamus sits a cluster of neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It contains roughly 20,000 cells, and every one of them is synchronized to a 24-hour cycle. This is your circadian rhythm, your internal clock. And it doesn't just regulate when you sleep and wake. It controls your body temperature, your hormone levels, your immune function, your reaction time, your ability to make decisions, and your ability to form new memories, all on a time schedule your brain has followed since before you were born. That clock produces 2 peaks of alertness per day, one in the mid-morning around 10 a.m., one in the early evening around 6 p.m., and it produces 2 valleys. One occurs between 3 and 5 a.m., when most people are deep asleep. The other occurs between 2 and 4 p.m., the same window every day in every person on Earth, regardless of what time zone they live in, regardless of what they ate, regardless of how much they slept the night before. Your body temperature dips slightly. Alertness drops. Reaction time slows. Researchers have found that blind individuals, people whose eyes cannot detect light at all, still experience the afternoon dip at the same time as everyone else. The signal doesn't come from outside. It is generated entirely from within. This is not tiredness caused by something you did. It is a scheduled event. Your brain is not breaking down at 3 p.m. It is following a timetable written by millions of years of evolution for a specific reason. Because in the world where your biology was built, the open heat of the African savanna, moving through the peak afternoon hours was costly. Predators were active. The heat drained calories faster than any food could replace them. The ancestors who rested in the afternoon recovered faster, thought more clearly, and lived longer than those who pushed through. The afternoon dip was never a weakness in the design. It was the design working exactly as intended. And for most of human history, when the signal arrived, people stopped. But here's what's fascinating. They didn't fight it. Across every inhabited continent, independently, without contact, every major human culture built the same response into the same hours of the day. The Mediterranean world called it the siesta. Traditional Chinese rest culture called it wushu. Anthropologist David Sampson and his team at the University of Toronto studied modern hunter-gatherer communities in Tanzania, some of the last people still living rhythms close to what humans followed before agriculture. They found that virtually all of them rested in the early afternoon for 20 to 60 minutes, and then resumed activity into the evening. The afternoon rest wasn't invented. It wasn't a luxury of warm climates or idle cultures. It was a biological default that every human society in every climate had independently discovered and built into the architecture of the day, which means the science that is now confirming this wasn't a discovery. It was a confirmation of something every culture already knew. In 2007, a study published in the Archives of Internal Medicine tracked over 23,000 Greek adults for 6 years. Participants who napped regularly had a 37% lower risk of dying from heart disease than those who did not. Not 5%, not 10%. 37%. NASA studied the same question from the other direction. Pilots who took a 26-minute nap showed a 34% improvement in cognitive performance and a 100% improvement in alertness compared to pilots who stayed awake. Not a full sleep cycle. 26 minutes. Researchers at University College London found that habitual napping was associated with measurably larger brain volume, structural preservation of the brain itself over time. The afternoon rest is not laziness wearing a disguise. It is maintenance the brain is actively requesting, with measurable consequences every time that request is refused. But here's where the story goes somewhere darker. Because what your brain is doing at 3 p.m. is not just pulling toward rest. It is fighting something that has been building inside you since the moment you opened your eyes this morning. All day, from the moment you wake, your brain produces a chemical called adenosine. Every hour you stay awake, more of it accumulates. Adenosine is your body's sleep pressure system, a chemical debt that grows with every waking hour and that can only be cleared by sleep. By early afternoon, after 6 or 7 hours of continuous wakefulness, that debt is large, loud, impossible to ignore through pure will alone. Caffeine doesn't give you energy. Caffeine blocks the receptors that detect adenosine. Your brain keeps producing the chemical. The pressure keeps accumulating. You just can't feel it until the caffeine wears off. And when it does, all the adenosine that has been building since morning, all the pressure caffeine was masking, arrives simultaneously. That sensation of your brain falling through the floor at 3 p.m. after a morning of coffee is not a coincidence. It is withdrawal from a chemical that was hiding a signal your body had been generating for hours. You didn't solve the problem. You deferred it with interest. And here is what most people never consider. Every day you fight this signal, you operate your brain at a structural deficit. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for judgment, creativity, and rational thought, is the most vulnerable part of the brain to accumulated sleep pressure. It degrades first. It recovers last. It is the first thing to go and the last thing to come back. This is why your worst decisions cluster in the afternoon. This is why the same argument feels more catastrophic at 4 p.m. than it would at 10 a.m. This is why the idea that seemed obvious at 3:30 looks different by morning. Your brain's most important functions, the ones that make you capable of nuanced thinking, emotional regulation, and sound judgment, are operating on fumes every single afternoon. And they have been since before you reached for that second coffee. So what changed? The same thing that dismantled every other natural human rhythm. Before industrialization, afternoon rest was simply part of the day. References to midday rest appear in English medical text from the 1400s, in traditional Chinese practice, in accounts spanning cultures that had no contact with each other. Then came the factory floor, the assembly line. The industrial economy required bodies present for fixed hours regardless of what those bodies were doing biologically. And so the afternoon rest was reclassified. In northern industrial cultures, it became a southern indulgence, a sign of underdevelopment, a weakness of warm climates that productive nations had evolved past. Productivity culture finished the work the factory started. Rest was something that happened at night, once, in one block, like a machine being switched off. An instruction that every human culture on Earth had independently embedded into the architecture of the day was renamed a character flaw. And the 3 p.m. crash got a new name: laziness, poor discipline. Something to push through. Every craving you have at 3 p.m. is your biology attempting to solve a problem you created. The coffee is more adenosine debt postponed. The sugar is a fast substitute for the cellular recovery your body is actually requesting. The mindless scrolling is a prefrontal cortex that no longer has the capacity for anything requiring sustained thought, reaching for the simplest available stimulation. None of it works the way 20 minutes of actual rest does. Studies on people who take regular afternoon rest consistently show improved memory consolidation, faster reaction times, and better emotional regulation in the hours that follow. The things you learn in the morning are more likely to stay if the afternoon includes genuine rest. The decisions you make after stopping are measurably better than the decisions made after pushing through the crash. Your body has 2 windows of peak cognitive performance per day. The valley between them is not a flaw in the design. It is a scheduled maintenance interval built into the system, an ancient instruction. Your ancestors didn't need an alarm to honor it. The signal came. They stopped. They woke up clearer. They worked again. That was the program. There is a signal running inside you right now that is older than any institution that ever told you to fight it. Every afternoon, in the same window, at the same time, it arrives. Not because you are weak, not because you are undisciplined, because you are running the same biological schedule that every human who ever lived ran for hundreds of thousands of years. For most of that time, people listened. Researchers have found that even in modern subjects, people who go camping for just 1 week with no artificial schedule, the body quietly falls back into a 2-peak rhythm without being told to. They begin resting in the afternoon on their own, as if some ancient program that had been waiting beneath the surface finally gets permission to run. Your body hasn't forgotten any of it. It still sends the same signal every day, at the same time, the same way it always has. What your brain is doing at 3 p.m. is not a malfunction. It never was. It is the oldest maintenance schedule in human history, still running, still waiting, and almost completely ignored by everyone alive today.